inflation rates and understanding its impact on the U.S. Inflation is a sustained raise in prices for goods and services. Essentials like housing, food, and energy have become more expensive. Inflation reduces purchasing power and strains low and middle market income households. It weakens savings, complicates business planning, and threatens social stability. And if ignored, it can deepen inequality and limit future opportunities. As Christian servant leaders, we must respond with wisdom, justice, and compassion.
All right, so talking about the current state of inflation rates, there are many kind of rising costs and attributes that inflation brings. So within the U.S., inflation has caused the prices of everyday necessities, such as food, transportation, and household supplies to rise. Because of this, it has put a strain on many households because wages from certain jobs have not increased at the same rate as inflation rates have, which has reduced the purchasing power of money. As a result of this, people are finding that their income and savings do not cover as much as they used to, which makes budgeting more difficult for certain people and families. It also has an impact on daily life and makes people cut back on non-essential spending. And businesses are also feeling the effects as higher production and supply costs lead them to raise their own prices, which ultimately continues the cycle of inflation. Moving on to evaluation of current U.S. policies. So the U.S. has sent out certain policies to kind of help people with inflation rates. And to respond, some of the current policies, the first one is Federal Reserve interest rate. This has the goal of slowing down borrowing and consumer spending, which helps reduce inflation over time. But however, this also means that loans and mortgages and credit card debt may rise and become more expensive, which can create more challenges for individuals and families. The government has also provided some programs, to help people manage higher living costs, especially lower income households. And some economists believe that the stimulus that rose from COVID in 2020, the spending during the pandemic contributed to these high inflation rates, while others argue it was necessary to support the economy. And even though inflation rates have started to decline, overall prices are still high and slowly increasing. And there are ongoing concerns about long-term affordability and economic stability.
Yeah, so just looking at the alternative policy actions and solutions. So first, to have monetary policy alone isn't enough. So looking at monetary tools like raising federal funds rate or contracting the money supply primarily operates through the demand side of the economy. They reduce consumption and investments by making borrowing more expensive, which slows aggregate demand. But the current inflation cycle has strong supply side origins. Production bottlenecks, labor shortages, energy disruptions. Raising interest rates can't reopen ports, they can't expand refinery capacity or train skilled workers. In fact, overly aggressive tightening can worsen supply conditions by discouraging business investments. And looking at the holistic long-term economic strategies, this requires coordination between monetary, fiscal, and structural policies. So looking at the fiscal policy, government spending and taxation, this should complement, not counteract monetary efforts. For instance, rather than broad stimulus checks, fiscal resources could target supply side investments such as infrastructure, R&D, and domestic manufacturing capacity. And these also raise aggregate demand, supply, not just demand, helping prices stabilize naturally over time. At the same time, labor market reforms are essential. Inflation often persists when productivity growth lags behind wage growth. Investing in training, technology adoption, and workforce participation expands the economy's productive potential, meaning firms can meet demand without passing on higher costs. In short, the goal isn't just to slow demand, it's to expand the productive capacity of the economy. When a long-run aggregate supply curve shifts outward, real output rises, prices stabilize, and economic growth becomes sustainable. And then, just looking at some of the ways we can strengthen. So strengthening domestic production means building resilience in sectors that drive price stability, especially manufacturing, energy, and transports. Policies like tax credits for reshoring, public-private R&D partnerships, and infrastructure. Modernization directly expands supply capacity, easing inflationary pressure over time. Looking at fiscal discipline and responsibility. So this involves aligning government spending with real economic growth. When fiscal expansion outpaces output, it injects excess demand and raises prices. And then disciplined budgeting paired with targeted investment in productivity, so enhancing projects keeps inflation expectations anchored. And then investing in workforce productivity tackles one of the deepest roots of inflation, which is low output per worker. Training programs, STEM education, and automation incentives can raise productivity and allow wages to grow without sparking inflation. And finally, global cooperation addresses the international nature of modern inflation. Commodity and supply shocks often cross borders, so stable trade relationships and diversified import sources are essential. Coordination on energy policy, technology sharing, and logistics reduces vulnerability to external shocks.
So some of the trade-offs, costs, and benefits of inflation. Some of the trade-offs would be it can support economic growth, but it reduces the purchasing power. There has to be a balance between having somewhat stable prices and not making it a challenge for crazy prices and stuff. Some of the costs to inflation is that it reduces the buyer's purchasing power. It makes businesses uncertain whether it be getting supplies, shipments, or labor prices. And it has unequal effects on, honestly, the population. Lower income families have a harder time providing for their family stuff if the inflation is just through the roof. Meanwhile, some of the benefits of inflation are that it encourages spending and investment. It shows that the market and the economy is active. Another benefit is that it's an indicator of growth in the economy, that the economy is growing, that business is good.
The Christian perspective on inflation. So the Bible teaches stewardship. All resources belong to God in Psalm 24 verse 1. And also inflation can act like a dishonest scale. In Proverbs 11 verse 1 it talks about when it harms the poor. Christians are called to practice justice, compassion, and fairness in the economy life. A healthy economy should protect the vulnerable and reward honest work. Believers should avoid greed, live responsible, and trust God's provision. And faithful stewardship means managing money wisely, helping others in need, and supporting economic systems that reflect biblical values of justice, honesty, and love for your neighbor.
Alright, moving on, we have recommendations for how to solve this. For short-term actions, we have monetary tightening, and that's looks like raising interest rates slowly to control inflation without causing a recession. Next, we have targeted relief, and that will look like helping low-income families with food, energy, and housing costs. Thirdly, we have energy independence, and that will look like boost local energy production to keep prices steady. And moving on to long-term strategies, we have investing in productivity, and that will look like investing in roads, tech, and schools to grow the economy. Then physical discipline would be like keeping government spending in check to avoid more inflation. Then finally, we have resilient supply chains, and that would look like strengthening supply chains and support local businesses.
And in conclusion, inflation is not merely an economic status. It reflects the moral and structural health of society. A holistic and virtuous approach must be balanced through justice, compassion, and prudence. As Christian servants, leaders, our goal is not to only control prices, but to cultivate systems that promote flourishness for all. By combining sound economics with biblical values, we can pursue a path for prosperity, serve others, not the other way around.